Welcome, one and all, to the Stock Up Podcast, your one-stop shop for stocking up on the information you need to qualify for the Pro Tour. My name is Alex Midas. I am joined each and every week by my co-host, Jacob Negro, where we talk about everything related to competitive Magic and how you can qualify for the Pro Tour. If you'd like to support us, the best way to do so is over on patreon.com/stockuppodcast. At the moment, we have one tier that's $1 a month, and for that, you get access to all of our exclusive content. For all of our patrons who have supported us thus far, on behalf of Jacob and I would like to thank you very much. And if you'd like to follow us also over on YouTube, that would be much appreciated. Of course, you can also listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So thanks for listening, and please enjoy the rest of the podcast. So do you have any friends that did well at the RC, Jacob?
None really that come to mind. A couple of close calls. I have two friends I saw had win-ins for the PT, and they both lost them, unfortunately. So,
Bummer.
yeah.
We also had the arena qualifier weekend over the weekend. I flunked out of that pretty early. How about you?
I went 5-3, so yeah, short of day two.
This is pretty good.
Yeah, I mean,
that format's tough.
Day twos. Yeah, my pool was interesting. I built two decks and used both a lot, including between games even.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I did that a couple times during my Arena Direct runs.
Yeah, an interesting use of sideboarding. But I'd say both decks, they were very polarized. It was like a green-black, pretty aggressive deck, but I wish it was more aggressive. But the top of its curve had two of the... is it the green enchantment, the 5-drop, that makes a 3/3?
Yeah, 3 green enchantment. When need to be, you make a 3/3 fractal, and then at the beginning of combat, target creature control gets +1 counter and vigilance until end of turn. Is that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I had two of those, and I also had the green paradigm. So, just curve out and buff my creatures. Additive Evolution and Germination Practicum are the names of those cards. I hope it's my pool. And, some decent black removal, some 2-for-1s, like some Cheerful Osteomancers, just trying to play the board as much as possible. I weirdly had 2 Studios First Years and 2 Forum of Amity, which is the black-white land, and I had Moment of Reckoning, but I didn't think it was correct to splash it. Actually, one of my games, I lost to a deck that had Moment of Reckoning. No, actually, I beat them game 1, even though they had Moment of Reckoning. I beat them with just all creatures and the Paradigm through a Moment of Reckoning, and them having it made me think maybe I should try to go splash it. And then I lost game 2 because I splashed it in kind of a predictable fashion. A big issue with that is, even though I fit in like 2 planes and 2 black-white lands, and I have, maybe some other sources, maybe I say I have 7 white sources or whatever to get to the Moment of Reckoning for turn 7, which is like not great, but not horrible. The problem is I have like 7 forests in my deck. So like I'm not accounting for the fact that 2 of those white sources are also my black sources. And almost exactly that happened. I just drew 4 forests in my first 7 lands, and I couldn't cast my card.
Right. Yikes.
Anyways, my other deck had 2 Resonating Loots, and it did have the Moment of Reckoning splashed off the 2 Resonating Loots and the big score, and it was like a blue-red control deck.
It's like a combo deck. You're trying to combo the loot plus the Reckoning.
That deck had a pretty powerful endgame, but it really had this problem, actually. It just, not only could some people go over the top of you in this format, like any of the people who could mill me, I probably could never beat them with that blue-red deck, so I didn't want to start with it, because I thought that was one of the most powerful things you could do in this format.
Mm-hmm.
As well as people countering my loots were like mana screwing me, so it was kind of a deck I played against non-blue decks.
Yeah.
And it was really good against them, I think. I had a lot, just infinite removal, like way more removal than threats, that I could pretty reliably not die, and then have the like Zealous Lorecaster Moment of Reckoning kind of loop to end the game. A big problem with this sealed format is I do think there are some cards that can deck you. One of which, like maybe honestly the best card to get in sealed, even though you kind of need some support in your pool, is the Tidecaller. The 1-mana 0/2.
Yep.
And I only point at that one because there's almost no counterplay to it when it works. Sometimes they can afford, and if you're playing like just a slow control sealed mirror, your opponent can play that card and like a 5-drop and like another cheap spell in the same turn, and you'll lose to 13.
Sometimes just that and the 5-drop, because a lot
Yeah.
of the times, even just the fact that you play two really big, something like if you play a 5-mana threat or you answer something by using 5 mana worth of spells, and then the thing they immediately have to do is answer your 1-drop on the next turn, that can sometimes just swing the tempo of the game pretty hard. And
Yeah, exactly.
that combined with the mill 10, just beating them some of the time.
And often the only realistic answer is Essence Scatter. Like,
Yeah.
even though it's a common, for the big spells in the format, there's at least like Brush Off, Disdainful Stroke, Spell Pierce, Quantrix Charm. There's like actually a handful of things that are quite good against Moment of Reckoning or Mathemagics, things like that can swing the game. But being a 1-mana creature is like so much more annoying to deal with.
Yeah. I guess when we're talking about pools, my pool, I had Moment of Reckoning and a lot of good, super good Silver Quill cards. And I was like pretty excited when I saw it. And then I put the deck together and it was like a Silver Quill deck and literally every card in black and white in there. And then like I had exactly 4 cards that cost less than 3 mana.
Yeah.
So I was like, so I looked around, but all my rares were like in white and black. And I was like, maybe this is still good. Maybe I'll just get fortunate. And I did not win any games. And then before even bothering to keep going, I just dropped so I could go play my store championship.
Oh, yeah.
And so I went over to my standard store championship and won an Oculus. That was cool.
Nice job. What'd you play in standard?
I played Lessons with the changes we talked about on the podcast last week.
Close to Ray Zhang's list, but with 4 bandit attachments.
Yep, I got a Spell
Awesome.
Pierce and a Consult. I added some Wan Shi Tongs to my sideboard.
Yeah, my team played
fall.
at the Pro Tour. I had I think 4 Lessons players on my team,
Mm.
and they played like 3 Wan Shi Tong in their sideboard, expecting all that.
Oh wow, yeah.
Obviously, the meta it's a little different at your local events and even now generally, but they knew about landfall going into it and just kind of really went aggressive on that.
My local events, I never know what to expect because there's always we have probably 16 or so standard players that could show up, and not all of them always do.
Right.
So we did have 2 landfall decks. I had to beat a landfall deck and Spellmentals and then something else. So, but yeah, nothing. It was a small tournament. Yeah. So let's see. In terms of RC, I guess the big thing, is the ban announcement that happened this week on Monday.
Yeah.
Today we're actually going to talk about Modern Pioneer because those are actually the formats that got changed. But while we're on the topic of Standard, did you expect any bans? We got no changes in Standard.
No, and I feel like I saw somewhere that they're just going to do another ban announcement in June. And it makes way more sense to me to touch Standard after the RCs are over.
Why are they so close together? Do you know?
Maybe just for this reason. I think they're just decided, and all that mix up with VV and, VV was left unbanned for such a long period of time because they didn't want to do emergency bans. I feel like somewhere in the middle of that, they just announced more dates that make sense to ban things.
Okay.
More based around, events, I think, which is what matters the most. And, we're about to get into Modern, and I know a lot of people are complaining about bans mid-RCQ season, and that makes sense to me, but I do got to say, as someone playing the next Pro Tour, which is Modern, this announcement came out the day I started thinking about Modern. So it's perfectly timed.
This might have been the case where
Pro Tour.
Where they were prioritizing the Pro Tour over the RCQs.
Yeah, I think so. And they wanted to shake up what decks were going to happen in the Pro Tour, which is fair because, honestly, on Sunday night, I was just thinking, the testing I've done in Modern in the last year is still completely valid. And
yeah, not a lot of big changes.
I can probably really focus on limiteds more than ever going into this Pro Tour. But these are pretty significant changes that are really going to shake up the format, I think.
Mm-hmm. In terms of Standard, this not an RCQ season or anything like that. They easily could have banned things to make the format more interesting. Obviously, this format is kind of fine right now if you consider
this month. But so I think it makes sense in the same month that people are preparing for a big tournament not to ban things. I do think there's some stuff they could ban next month though.
Okay. All right. I kind of think they might not ban anything next month either because it's sort of in a place where it's pretty diverse and maybe the gameplay's bad, but I don't even know if a couple bans will fix it. It might be the case where they would have to ban up, a large slew of cards. I'm not sure if they're willing to do it.
Yeah, and historically their philosophy here are like banning cards that might rotate anyways have a high priority, which to be clear, the next rotation I believe is January 1st, 2027, which will start kind of the new era of just the rotations happening on January 1st and cards being printed in a certain year or later dictating if they're legal and standard. Um, so that'll be 2025 will be this new starting year, which means Aether Drift will be the first set legal and standard. But then in addition to that, they have Foundations, which they said would just be legal and standard for 5 years, which kind of a weird note because I've seen nobody really clamoring about how, new players should buy Foundation packs to get into standard or anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, there's not even that many relevant cards in Foundations. There's like a few big ones, and
The
then that's it.
two that come to mind, and I'm sure there's more, but the two big ones are Llanowar Elves and Omniscience, I think.
Yeah.
And
Other
Burst
than
Lightning. Okay, that's another
sure,
one.
Burst
Yeah.
Lightning, and there's some playable cards in there besides that, but those are definitely the big ones. It's kind of weird.
And Llanowar Elves is by far the biggest one, right? I mean,
Oh, of course.
Burst Lightning has, cards that aren't as good, especially for an aggressive prowess deck, but Torch the Tower has been legal and standard this whole time, but basically stopped seeing play when Burst Lightning got printed.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll touch more on standard another time, maybe even during the next ban announcement or after some of these RCs. But for now, we can go over the bands we're going to talk about today. So first of all, we got Pioneer, Corey Steelcutter's band. Then in Modern, we have Flage, Titan of Fire's Fury band, Lotus Veil band, and then uniquely we have a couple of unbans in Modern as well. Unbanning Violent Outburst. That's the one red green instant cascade card, and then Umezawa's Jite is also unbanned.
Yeah, Jite notably has been banned since Modern was a format. It's never been legal in Modern before now. I'll shortcut. I don't think you should play this card. At most, you can put one in your sideboard or something.
Maybe. It wouldn't be terrible in some matchups if you're a creature deck versus another creature deck.
It might still be terrible
in small copies.
It's
one of the cases where it was it's a really old card, right? And it used to be a super dominant kind of force that would hold down creature decks, and just it saw a lot of legacy play with Stoneforge Mystic and this sort of thing. And so it's just sort of always existed on Modern's ban list. Modern, they have a history of unbanning things way too late, or another way to look at it maybe is really conservatively. So like at some point they unbanned Splinter Twin and Bitter Blossom and Jason Mind Sculptor, and basically every time they did, with a few exceptions, those cards did not, if they were good for maybe a little bit in Jason Mind Sculptor's case, but mostly those cards just didn't do anything. And I think this is going to be another instance of that, where Magic just, the modern format isn't really about playing a 2-mana equipment and paying 2 to equip to your creature.
Definitely.
Violent Outburst is more of a shocking one, though.
That's the most shocking change in this whole list of changes, I believe.
Yeah. What's going on with this one? What were they thinking?
Yeah, so for those that don't know, this was banned because of the combination of Living End and Crashing Footfalls being the Cascade hits previously. They were both teamer decks. When people try those decks nowadays, you'll just see Bant. Living End, you've seen Sultai a lot, where they just only play Shardless Agent, but they play, like Overlord the Baelmerk to help themselves dig the Shardless Agents. This is notably an instance, and all these other cards I mentioned are sorceries. The text on the card, creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Doesn't matter much. You'll see people use it for damage, because why not? When it's lethal or whatever, it matters sometimes, but that's, not why it's good. And it also, tweaks these decks to be teamer decks pretty much, which in the case of Living Ends does not matter that much. They don't really play any other red cards. In the case of the Rhinos deck, it's kind of a big deal. The Bant decks just did not have like Dead Gone or Fire Ice, which are like some of the better interactive tools you can play when you warp your deck around the Cascade mechanic. But yeah, I mean, I got back on the PT train playing Living Ends at an RC right before it got banned, basically. And the other notable change, I guess, to Living Ends is they don't have Grief anymore than they did back then. And really the only new cards they have are Wistfulness and Sink into Stupor, I'd say. Since, like this, I would have said Living End was like clearly the best deck in Modern when Violent Outburst got banned. So just as a reference, like, since then we have MH3, and the current Living End deck list maybe isn't even, it might be worse than it was back then because it doesn't have grief, but at least it has some new cards that matter. They're pretty high impact, I'd say. And Vexing Bauble and Consign to Memory are now cards in Modern. That being said, I think the Cascade strategies were like dominant in that era and also under a lot of attack at the same time. So they obviously have some capability to withstand being under attack, and I think Outburst is, a huge deal, kind of, especially against Consign. It's a really simple sort of, thing everybody learns about Magic, but I think it's really just getting demonstrated the last day I've been watching people play Living End and Rhinos, where it's just like your opponent passes with Consign into your turn 3. You don't cast your spell. They can't even really fetch on your end step for a Surveil land, because then they'd tap out and you could resolve your Living End or Crashing Footfalls. Then on their turn, they're like incentivized to pass with Consign again, and maybe even a replicated Consign, because they're scared you're going to play this with Force of Negation backup, which is now a whole new, thing these decks can do, is resolve their spell with Force Negation. And then both Living End and Rhinos could just like play an Endurance or do something else that doesn't get consigned. So it's kind of like a huge amount of play against counterspells, just all in general, but Consign being the one everyone points at. I just really wanted to point that out.
Yeah, so a couple things there. The Force of Will thing, the Force of Negation thing works because Force of Negation can't be cast on your turn, which is funny because I think the idea of that is that you can't use it to protect combos, but you can use it to protect this combo. And then the other thing is just like the instant speed thing, right? We've seen really good combo decks in the past, like Twin had an aspect to this where it wasn't quite the same because they still had to resolve the Sorcerer Speed Twin, and that even then is an example of how this is so crazy. But you can just put your opponent in spots where you do exactly what you said. You spend your mana while they're holding up things, and you get ahead that way.
And in addition to that too, the ability to put Living End on the stack at instant speed also just changes a ton of matchups. Like previously being locked in the sorcery speed, I'd say a deck like Broodscale or just like a creature combo deck, really hard to beat with Living Ends because they could just play their whole combo from hand, and you don't really have any interaction besides just like subtlety and Force Negation. Now there's just a ton of matchups, and I used to play Living End and be in this spot, especially in open deck lists where you just realize if I pass a Violent Outburst, my opponent literally cannot win. Like, I know I'm safe. I know that whatever they do gets stopped by a Living End somehow resolving in the middle of their turn. And, so I'm going to be safe this turn. And if they don't pressure me into casting it either, then maybe I'll just cycle some more stuff, and then still have this option next turn.
Yeah, you may just think of Living End as the part where they get all their creatures into play and then attack you on the following turn for lethal, but with Violent Outburst, it's also an instant speed Wrath you get to use against your opponent.
Yeah, like Prowess would be a good example of a matchup where it's like, as long as I'm not scared of like dying to some lightning bolts and lava darts, then I know I'm not going to take combat damage next turn if I don't want to.
So when this was banned, was a little bit of my like black hole where I just wasn't paying attention to Magic at all. I heard some around this ban announcement. I heard some content creators talking about how like Rhinos was the main reason this was banned. Is that not right?
I can give a rundown as to what happened. So the ban before this was a combination of Fury and Up the Beanstalk. So a little bit after Wilds of Eldraine came out, Up the Beanstalk, totally deserved ban. It got banned pretty fast, just with all the Evoke Elementals mostly. Then I'd say after that, big top decks were like Scam, without Fury still, Rhinos, and Living End. But Living End was weirdly like less than 5% of the meta, I'd say, and Rhinos was kind of the top deck, which to me makes sense knowing kind of what happens in Modern. It's kind of, has some more traditional interaction of just, like kill your guy, counter your spell, and, make 2 Rhinos as my threat, which is obviously a really potent one, but it's pretty much just playing threats and answers. And, it's weird because Living End, I think, was very favored against Rhinos. And when I played Living End, I just thought, I thought it was a tremendous favorite to win every game 1 I ever played. and you had to kind of weave around some interaction, but you could kind of do that post board. But kind of what I had mentioned with like endurance nowadays, just like play some cards that do stuff. That deck had endurance and subtlety. Sometimes I'd have like Bone Crusher Giant in my sideboard. Your deck is 30 creatures, and you could figure out how to play some interaction and just play creatures as like a way to beat hate, where that your deck's a bunch of cantripping cyclers, so you can dig to hate. The RC I played, I think Living End was still maybe in that 5% range, maybe a little bit more. And then I remember there was like 1 or 2 weekends of RCs after that modern one, and Living End was suddenly like the most played deck in those RCs, and then this card got banned.
Okay.
So it had like a really like short stint, I'd say, of being very obviously really strong. It kind of helps. Like that RC I played was the release weekend of Murders of Karlov Manor. So there were Surveil lands, which improved this deck and Rhinos a lot, all decks though. But there was also Leyline of the Guild Pact. So people really got high on making this hexproof Scion of Draco, which is kind of annoying for Rhinos and completely ignorable for Living It.
Yeah.
And in fact, that tournament I played, I went 4-0 against Leyline Scion decks and didn't lose a game against them either. Just like kind of a great tournament to play it.
Yeah. Okay. So I think this question's relevant to my thought process. But so, like, do you think Wizards was aware that Living End was one of the reasons they should ban this, or did they just think it was mostly Rhinos?
I think so.
Okay, you think it was both?
Yeah, and I think the Living End deck just has like one of the most consistent game plans of any Magic deck like you've ever seen in any format.
It sure does. Yeah,
and that's why I think that it's so good at beating people trying to stop it, specifically because it kind of like can afford to maybe use more of its spells to fight over those types of games than like a traditional combo deck could, because still in the end they just have like their 8 Cascaders, a bunch of Cyclers, and Surveil lands.
Yeah. For as long as I can remember, Living End has been a deck. It's gone through a lot of different iterations. I used to hate it. Now it's kind of cool because it's like, a non-Mono Horizons deck that's stuck around. But you're going to have to explain to me. So from what I understand of what we've been talking about Modern the last time, Living End was already still a pretty good deck, like right now, before Violent Outburst getting unbanned.
Yeah, so I think, first of all, it couldn't have been that good of a deck. It was a deck that I thought was kind of playable, and I think I talked up about it a lot because I just, I've won with a lot historically and like it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a pet Modern deck to me. Notably, I'll say it, at Pro Tour Edge of Eternities, there were 0 Living Ends registered, if that gives you any insight to, it being maybe a playable deck.
It's kind of a fringe deck then.
Yeah, and it got a little bit of a juice or a boost from Wistfulness and maybe Deceit. Which, that's going to matter now that Violent Outburst is unbanned. I know I've mentioned this before, talking about Wistfulness in Modern, but a really good card against Living End is Urza's Saga. Because it's not counterable, and it can tutor like Vexing Bauble or Graveyard Hate and make, some creatures too, which is good against, a Wrath deck to some extent, which Living End is. It can put pressure on the board by itself. And having just like a main deck, 2-mana answer to Urza's Saga that is still, in every other matchup or when their opponent doesn't play any artifacts or enchantments is, like blue, draw 2, discard 1, and put a 6/5 in your graveyard is, it's just perfect to kind of fix that Saga problem. And, I watched Nassif load up a Living End League, and the very first game he played, turn 2 on the play, killed his opponent's only permanent Urza Saga, turn 3, did it again, opponent conceded. Because that's just like another thing is some decks just like Amulet, just play Urza Saga on turn 1 to try to combo you,
Right. I guess I just like, what is their thought? Because to me, this is just this is like supercharging that deck. This is a really big deal.
It is. So this is going to be a huge shakeup to Modern. So maybe that's their goal. They just want things to be new and exciting. And I got to say, Modern is a tough and tricky format to. Yeah, I know it's a really boring card. It'll be weird because I do think that maybe Gorios and like the Blink strategies. I'm specifically thinking about decks that have like both Solitude and Consign. They might be pretty good against these Cascade decks, and those decks are already kind of good by themselves anyways, and they didn't get banned here at all. So, by the time the PT comes around, people might think that, living ends and rhinos aren't even good, but then that, enters a whole different discussion because I think an important part of modern is that there's a lot of powerful decks that maybe they're just not good when they're kind of knowing things that need to be beaten. And, it's possible, right now things are really hostile for Living End, I'd say, looking at league results. And we're going to see if it can, kind of win despite that, which then means it's obviously really broken, or if it's going to die down, but then it's going to be this interesting kind of thing lurking in the format, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I guess that would be best case scenario.
Yeah, this sits there and lurks.
Yeah. I mean, it is
Yeah.
still kind of like an oppressive strategy for certain things. I mean, it's almost like they want something to really just topple energy and like the fair strategies that we've had for so long. But it's funny that they both unban this and also ban Flage.
Yeah, and it is super weird to unban it. I agree. One of my thoughts I had was, are there going to be like more suspends weird cards in Marvel? Like, are they just trying to like buff something that's coming in Marvel? That would be so funny. If there
Probably
was just
not, right?
another cycle
I
of
mean, maybe.
cards like that, but that would be really
Uh,
weird if there were.
I don't love this play pattern in general. I don't know why we're trying to do this if that's the case.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I mean, okay. So those are the unbans. In terms of bans, I mean, Modern really is getting shaken up like crazy. So Flage, Titan of Fire's Fury banned. This makes a lot of sense for me, even though I don't play a ton of Modern. Like Uro is banned, and the Flage is at least as good as Uro. Probably better with
Flage
Arena.
Is a very ban-worthy card. Not weird to me to get banned.
Right.
We'll see. I kind of wish they like unbanned Amped Raptor or something. Maybe gave Boros something back. Especially because Amped Raptor still doesn't fix the Boros problem at all. Of like maybe my opponent is showing up with fire magic.
Right.
Just yeah. I mean, either way, I've already seen tons of people still trying to make Boros work. It might still work. That's kind of an archetype for sure, though. That's like, I don't think you're going to beat people if they're packing pyroclasms and fire magics, but maybe they don't want to do that anymore because your deck got banned, and now maybe all of a sudden Boros energy is just like a very high win rate deck. But the problem is, it was the most played deck in Modern. People own the cards for it, so they're just trying really hard to still make their deck work.
Yeah, and it was at some point you like train the player base too, right? Like it's so popular for so long that probably for the next few months people will still be relatively prepared for it, even if less so. And so it might just die off for that reason, even if it maybe comes back in the future. Because I mean, there's still a lot of strong things going on in that deck. But Flage was sort of just like the One Ring before it, was sort of the way that it was made really resilient.
Yeah, I can tell you one thing: the Boros mirrors are probably way nicer now.
Oh yeah, was it just about setting up Arena Flage before?
It doesn't have to necessarily be arena, but I mean, the best way to describe it is you could make a lot of cool plays in your favor, feel like you're pulling ahead, and it's completely undone by like your opponent being able to escape Flage.
Yeah, I mean, this was always the problem with these escape titans. I mean, I guess not Croxa or whatever his name is, but this one in a row, it's like both, in Uro's case, it was like ramp and defensiveness because it's life gain and a finisher and your card advantage. And this is kind of the same way where it's like removal and card advantage and your finisher all wrapped in one. Yeah. Okay. So that'll be interesting. That has obvious effects. What about this other band, Lotus Field? Is this? I'm assuming. Well, I know this is targeting Amulet Titan. Is this?
I think
relevant?
this is a really good ban, and I don't even think the Amulet players are that upset about it. I think they know that, their deck's kind of broken in some sense, and this ban definitely nerfs their deck. Like, I don't think their deck is secretly getting stronger. It might get stronger in the sense that people are less prepared for you. But, this card also is kind of a tournament nightmare. I played Amulet at an RC last November, and someone I was in a Discord with had mentioned how miserable it is to resolve Scape Shift, and I really agree. You would just like play a Scape Shift with Spelunking or an Amulet in play and know that you were going to win the game every time, but you had to just like do 100 more things, and your opponent, it's so kind of intricate that it makes sense for your opponent to not just like concede, and you have to not have certain lands in your hand for it to work, or else the lines are different. That being said, there might be some new, worse, intricate things. I already see people brewing with Zurin's Orb and Sylvan Safekeeper as ways to do Analyst loops, which are both very tutorable cards in the Amulet deck. Um, those are going to be worse. They kind of require a whole extra card to combo with, but that might still be where they move towards.
Yeah. Okay. So, quality of life change maybe for Tournament Magic,
Yeah, their deck's
regardless.
slower. Like, there's no way their deck is going to get faster with this ban. So that's nice.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes your opponent just plays an amulet and plays a second amulet and played Lotus Field and had no lands and played a Titan and killed you.
But definitely more of a nerf, not really killing the deck or even
Yeah,
bringing it
I
down
agree.
that much. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely like a somewhat minor nerf, but the analyst looping kind of kill did beat like removal. Like it could work through solitude, like
Yeah.
doing the scape shift line. So if they don't find something else to do, it's still really scary. People are pointing at Cultivator Colossus as a good card against Solitude, and it is good against Solitude, but it's not good against Consign. And a lot of these Solitude decks are Consign decks.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll let the Amulet Titan Wizards do their thing, I guess. Maybe they'll find something different. Do you think there's any chance they like completely change their win condition? Go back to like Valakut or anything like that?
Yeah, they're probably either going to look to play Dryad Valakut or do what I had mentioned earlier, where they find a different way to loop Analyst.
Okay.
The Dryad Valakut, lots of bounce lands builds, I will say, is like, it's much more resilient than Lotus Field builds. The problem is the interactive decks have gotten so powerful since we last had to build Amulet like that it might not matter that you're more resilient, like the
Yeah.
opponents are just still going to have the right disruption and kill you fast.
Okay. All right. Well, those are the bans. We will come back to Pioneer, but now that we're on Modern, let's look at some of the like practical applications, what people have been doing. We've got a Modern challenge that happened, this looks like yesterday, that you sent me. And what's going on interesting here?
So top two decks, both Solitude Consign decks.
Okay.
Like I
So
mentioned.
Blink without the red. Guess we'll look at the winner, just blue, white,
Yep.
Blink. So this was sort of a deck people were playing. I think they realized ultimately that the Jeskai version was better.
Yeah, both decks sprang from my PT team at the time, Team CFB or TCG player, interestingly enough. So that's kind of, cool to see Jeskai and blue white. This blue white deck is kind of a natural maybe move for energy players. You don't have to play the White Orchid Phantom Flagstones thing, but it doesn't hurt. Accelerating your own mana is not bad, and big mana strategies are kind of a tough thing for this deck to normally beat. So having access to flickering White Orchid Phantom is a good way to kind of steal those matchups. And now that Flage is out of the format, Riddler really kind of stands alone as maybe a big grindy card to play.
Yeah, sounds pretty good. I noticed this deck only has a couple consigns. I guess it's got the more in the sideboard.
Yeah. No, I mean, not all these decks are main deck consign decks, to be clear. That's not really what I meant by Solitude Consign.
Okay.
Just that they're going to have access to like the full 4 consigns in their 75 if they want them because they're playing blue.
Yeah. I mean, I guess there's no reason why you can't just play this kind of like the Jeskai deck. You're missing...
Yeah, you don't have Ragavan, but you just have this kind of solid
Discharge.
blue-white core.
I guess you could still play Discharge in Ragavan. I don't know. Is that crazy?
No, it wouldn't be crazy. You could... I mean, I think with Flage gone out of Boros, if you think of it more like a Boros deck splashing, I don't know, Riddler, like, that's not crazy to me, I guess. Because, your splash is going to be less annoying because you don't have Flage and you probably have less Arena of Glory, so you probably just afford more dual lands.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think it would be weird to just see Boros players, splashing blue or black for maybe some interaction to kind of replace the Flage, especially because also Flage was interaction to some extent in creature matchups, at least.
Yeah. Some interesting cards here. I see a Mockingbird. Is that just because it's good with Ocelot Pride and Guide, kind of?
Yeah, this list also has Starfield Shepherds, and yeah.
Oh, right. Something to tutor with that. Sure.
Yeah, and yeah, the Shepherds are quite good in this deck. You assemble the Guide and Pride thing. I know Ranger Captain of Eos is legal, but, I was with the team that developed this deck, and the Shepherds are just kind of nice because they're cheaper. You can play Felia and the Shepherd and hit your land drop instead of needing to hit your land drop. Um, and they don't have a Mistcaller. Mistcaller was a pretty good. Like that's a weird kind of containment priest-esque one drop that you can get.
What does that card do?
It's like a 1 mana 1/1 that you can. It's blue, and you can sacrifice it to until end of turn. If a non-token creature would enter the battlefield and wasn't cast, exile it instead. So like you sack it, and until end of turn, it's like there's a containment priest in play. So it just kind
Gotcha.
of stops like unfair things, but also you can still do. You can like sack it and target their thing with Felia and attack. When you attack with Felia, do the kind of the consign trick. But I
Mhm.
think notably, just like Neoform Gorios, Living End, even
Okay.
just kind of
So,
nice.
I mean, so for people who are right in the middle of their ski season and they had Jeskai Blink banned and they, or well, they had their Flages banned from their Jeskai Blink deck, do you think they should just try to jump to this?
If you've been playing Solitude in Modern, I would not stop playing Solitude in Modern if you're just like that type of player. And I think these decks are pretty well positioned, like I mentioned. They sound good against both the Cascade decks, and if people are still playing Amulet, they're probably way better against Amulet than they were before with that ban.
Okay, that makes sense. The other one that was in the finals of this, McWinsauce's Esper Blink. So
Yeah, I
this
like.
was people played this before, so this just kind of got a shot in the arm and didn't really have to change.
Yeah, and I like this build of Esper. And by this build, I don't mean every specific card, but I mean that he's not playing Psychic Frog. Um, I think you have to pick between Witch Enchanter and Psychic Frog. Like a mono white land in your frog deck is not really acceptable. And I think generally, when I've talked to people about Esper Blink for a while now, they mostly agree. They just like splashing Riddler and Consigns in the sideboard. And this has a few other things, but that's mostly it.
Okay, so it's really a white black deck. Why is Witch Enchanter so good? If that's
So it's a land you can hit with Overlord of the Bailmerk, so that's nice. Your Overlord has this nice kind of flexibility to it, and then you can also use Flicker Wisp on it as a land to then get the Witch Enchanter down, which is just like in the matchups that it's good, like Affinity is an example, it's really good.
gotcha. So you could still set it as a land and then get it later.
Yeah,
Or
because
Flicker
you're a
Wisp.
blink deck too, so like you get the Witch Enchanter down, maybe even ahead of curve, and you have a blinkable Witch Enchanter at the ready now.
Yeah, that does sound pretty nice. Felia
And
can
then
not
Ephemerate.
do that, but Flicker
Yeah.
Wisp can. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah, and then I saw a good description of this deck recently that was just like it's pretty consistent. It's just that the thing it does might not be good, but like it's pretty good at like playing like a Fatal Push or a Thoughtseize on the first turn, and then like setting up an Overlord or a Riddler getting flickered by the third turn.
Yeah. What do you think about the like Esper Gorios decks? Are they similar to this? I mean, guess not really.
Yeah, I mean obviously they have a lot of the same things going on. They were the most played deck at the last Modern Pro Tour. I think and yeah, this player RVNG, I've noticed this. They have moved away from Quantum Riddler. They have 3 in their sideboard, 0 main. They're back to Pelagi Archaeologist. I really hate this. This seems like a horrible direction to go, just basically ever. I think anybody I talked about Gorios, and I think a reason I had personal failings with Gorios is that the Riddlers let you just like mulligan really aggressively, which I'm kind of bad at nowadays. And you're just a deck that really needs things to come together, so it just does mulligan aggressively. But yeah, I mean it's kind of like the Esper Blink deck, but with access to a combo. That combo matters a lot against like Living End, I will say. Getting an Atroxa into your graveyard against Living End is, a really annoying thing for them to deal with.
Okay. I found a list, but I don't think this is a normal list. This is just what was on the Goldfish page for Modern.
Yeah, this is a Indomitable Creativity deck that has Gorios as well.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's a very weird one. Also, I was going to link you. Another challenge has had results since I linked to you.
Oh, like today? Okay,
Yeah.
sure.
Like, just
Yeah, we can look at it.
It has a lot of other different decks, and including the winner is a Boros Energy deck. So that's interesting to talk about, given Flage was just banned. Yep. So Still kind of a core. 3 Ragavans, weird to me. Lots of weird one-ofs here. A direction I wouldn't have been surprised to see people go is just to maybe become more of a white-red Blood Moon deck in Boros. Blood Moon, I think, is pretty good against these Blink decks, actually. Their mana is just like not really well set up to fight through it that easily. And when you don't really care about casting Flage or your Arena of Glory working, you really just need a Plains to be off to the races as this deck. In addition to that, yeah, I mean, this list is kind of all over the place. I don't really like it specifically.
They're probably just trying different
Yeah.
cards.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
One card I had seen that looked pretty good to me. I know Voice of Victory's been stock in Boros for a while, but I wouldn't be surprised to see those numbers go up. It is pretty good in the deck. It's really synergistic with Golem Bombardment and Ajani. When it attacks, it gives you 2 red permanents. They still last into your second main phase because they go away at the end step. They're even good with Ocelot Pride. You can get permanent warrior tokens with Ocelot Pride. It's good with Guide of Souls too. Guide of Souls has a weird trigger where it just goes on the stack every time you attack, no matter how much energy you have. So when you attack with Voice of Victory, you can get 2 life and 2 energy before you resolve your Guide of Souls trigger and maybe give something flying. And I'm saying all this because I think the biggest issue for Voice of Victory was Flage. So now you don't have to worry about your voice just getting flaged. And yes, there's 1 mana removal for it, but Voice of Victory does the cool thing of at least your opponent has to wait to untap and use their 1 mana to kill it.
That all makes sense. Just kind of thinking about this deck conceptually, I'm trying to think of like what matchups you're really missing out having Flage. And the biggest one I can think of is the Mirror.
Yeah, I think maybe these Blink decks, they do have Felia and stuff.
The Blink decks, maybe, okay.
And just some annoying inevitability. And then, yeah, people's sideboard cards against you, Wrath of the Skies, stuff like that. I guess another point in favor of Voice of Victory is it's not weak to Pyroclasm or Fire Magic. There's obviously some 3-mana Wraths that are red, like Fire Spout that people play. But
the sideboarding games is a good point. I guess I was just thinking like there's a lot of matchups where this deck will still be pretty will still have its core game plan even without Flage against them.
Yeah, definitely. You're still just a pure kind of beatdown deck. We see Affinity also in second, which is not really surprising. It was a deck I had called the best deck in Modern kind of previously, and nothing got touched here. The weapons manufacturing, Claws of Gix stuff, all these people are still trying Boros from what I can tell. That's going to matter a lot. It might be tough into the Cascade matchups. They are good at playing a lot of things and leaving up counter magic, I'll admit, but Violet Outburst is just like the exact thing that is good against counter magic, as I'd already mentioned. And, 4 main deck Wistfulness had a Living End, and I know some of the Rhinos players, I see 2 Wistfulness, stuff like that, because it's still, an effective card for them.
Do you expect the Rhinos strategy to be good still?
It's popular. It looks like people kind of have at least a memory of Living Ends being really kind of broken by the time it was banned.
Mm-hmm.
Though, people complained about Grief a lot back then, to be fair. Both decks, they're so interesting because both decks don't have a lot of wiggle room, I'll say. There's some flexibility to how you can build some of the details, but they mostly are always going to look the same. And, there's some tricks they can do. I think people are really over-indexed against the specific, nature of these decks just having Cascade cards, if that makes sense. I'll see, what does this Boros deck have? It has Orum's Chant, 2 Vexing Bauble, Drannith Magistrate, 2 High Noon. And those are just, all things that specifically target the Cascade mechanic. And Rhinos, I think, maybe has... it's less of its deck is dedicated to the Cascade mechanic working. So if your opponent is really over-indexed on beating just Cascade, maybe your stuff like Quantum Riddlers and Endurances and Dead Gone and Fire Ice kind of let you pull ahead there. But I think Living End can do that. I was just thinking today, I saw a lot of Boros lists that look like this type of sideboard, and I was like, I'm just gonna put Fire Spout in my sideboard.
Sure. It's actually pretty good against him now.
Yeah.
I guess Like
play Fire Spouts into Wistfulness if I need to.
I guess I remember what the Rhinos deck is. Like I've seen lists and stuff, and it doesn't seem like it seems like something that could easily have been power crept, and people don't know that yet. But I don't know.
Yeah, I'll say another weird thing about Living End is, and I don't think this is a very shared sentiment among other Living End players, but I found Grief, I played them. They were mattered a lot. I think already looking at it, I think Violent Outburst is better against counterspells than Grief was. They both obviously helped a ton against counterspells, but I think Grief wasn't that good against aggressive creature decks. I boarded them out in my Street Wraiths a lot when I played Living End, just for like red removal and stuff. So all that is just to say that like basically nowadays instead of Grief I have Wistfulness, which does a completely different thing, but it's better in some matchups than Grief was. It's not like a pure nerf.
Sure. Grief was always a more annoying card than it was good, although obviously, still good, but
Yeah, I mean the Living End play pattern, it was really good, right? Like
yeah,
get your interaction out of your hand, and then when I Living End you,
get
I
it back
just,
later
get something else out of your hand.
in case
The
you have a
problem is,
sweeper or something.
yeah, I think when your opponent's game plan as a creature deck was just to race you, it didn't really matter that much. And
Yeah.
it was a awkward card that could be in your, it could just be a dead card in your hand if you didn't draw any black cards, stuff like that. Or maybe their hand's all creatures and you put a creature in their graveyard for them, was like not super common, but occasionally mattered.
Sure. Is there anything that strikes you particularly interesting about this list of Living End I have up right now, or is this a decent place for people to start if they're looking?
No, this is like exactly kind of what I mean. I like, is this Sandpop? Just to be clear, it's hard for me to see.
It is by Sam.
Yeah, I was a touch on this.
Place.
They moved the fourth endurance to the sideboard. I think more people, it's weird because Living End's so popular, so it's hard for me to say like cut all your endurances. And I think I'm always going to play 4 in my 75, but endurance got added to this deck after Violent Outburst and Grief were like both banned.
Yeah, okay.
And like, I had mentioned this deck just struggled against his opponent, like passing with counter magic up turn after turn. And obviously endurance does a cool thing where like your opponent, might get stuff in their graveyard, and it's nice to be able to empty their graveyard because you're going to bring everything back. But Living End can often overpower some stuff in some graveyards. It, also I'm not really endorsing having 0 endurance. I might still play 1 or 2 in my main deck to maybe answer some weird spots like that. But you really don't need the like, I need something, it got added to the deck to be literally anything you could do at instant speed, and now you're back to just being a totally fine instant speed deck. So
yeah,
like it's not really doing that anymore.
You could have a 3/4 flash.
Yeah, it's hard to like really, push people too far away from it because the replacements for it are Strike, Riverwinder, and Wake River Waves, pretty much. Just more cyclers, which
like
that makes your deck.
Waves.
Yeah, I like Wake River Waves too. I'd probably play like 2 Wake River Waves and 4 Wistfulness right now. Yeah, that's just like it's a lot of 2-drops, and you have all these Surveil lands, and some of your lands cost mana. I'd probably aim to play 23 lands with 6 of them being like land cyclers, so like 2 elephants, 4 Ents. I don't really like these Mysterized Villages people play. I know you're a teamer deck, it enters untapped a lot, but in my mind, it's costing you like a Sink into Stupor or better mana. And I don't really get what, like, I guess like Force Negation, Vexing Bauble. It doesn't stop you from getting consigned, is like the weird thing. And I also just think that, especially if you're going to play the endurances too, you also have Settle, to be clear, so like more flash threats. I just don't think this deck is that bad against counterspells anymore. I think guys kind of instantly with the Outburst unban, like you're just pretty good at navigating through counter magic.
Yeah, there's a lot of flash, and then there's like a decent amount of just threats too that you could just play that they would have to counter.
Yeah, I might play 4 Living End. That was much more obvious when Grief was legal, but it's a really stupid way to lose, to have 0 Living Ends left in your deck. And
How
you draw
would that happen? They just counter all of them?
Yeah, or you draw too many, or you mill them with Waker Waves, stuff like that.
Sure.
Now you have Wistfulness, which means like when you do draw Living Ends, at least you still can like convert it into a different card by discarding it to Wistfulness.
Yeah.
And that's just like, yeah, I don't know. You could also shuffle them back with Endurance technically, but sometimes Force Negation matters. Or like, Sink into Super is a new card to think about, which is like a cancel against Living Ends, but it's still more cancels in people's decks than they had previously.
Yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
And it puts it in your hands, which means you can't shuffle it back with endurance. Also, shuffling back your living end with endurance also implies you'd have no graveyard to bring back later, so you have to kind of do some rebuilding. But all that being said, I think it's not that costly to just put 4 living end in your deck, and it's pretty good against counter magic to have.
The fourth one.
And then also, I guess the other weird thing about Mysterized Village to me, I mean, this list, it's all pretty minor stuff, but like, I think you could fit in like 10 untapped blue sources on turn 1 reasonably, like, easily in this deck. And you might wonder, like, why that really matters to me. And I just want a Mystical Dispute Frog. Frog's pretty annoying.
Oh, right.
So I just like a few more ways, like, to have turn 1 Mystical Dispute up.
Oh, Dispute's nice in this deck.
Which card?
Dispute.
Oh, yeah. I mean,
it's like a 1-man interaction that you can have in your deck.
Yeah, I haven't tested this yet or anything, but like, every now and then you'll see like extra interactive spells, and it's usually like a Flare of Denial or something in these Living End decks. I wouldn't be surprised if I played Living End at the next Pro Tour if I like main decked a Mystical Dispute, because
why not?
There's you're limited on what 1-mana interaction you could ever play, and that's one of the better ones, obviously, because every sideboard always has 3.
Yeah. Just really quick on Mysterized Village, I have a feeling this might be one of those like overrated cards that is so overrated that people are going to play it no matter what. Kind of like how Surgical Extraction was, like that kind of popularity.
Yeah.
Just from my amount I see people play with it in Standard, and whenever I try it, I'm just like, I don't understand. Like, most of the time that you can do this and activate it and have 2 extra lands and stuff, you could have just played around the counterspell anyways. It's just doesn't come out as much as you'd think.
Maybe I'd play it as like a sideboard land.
Maybe.
There's some other weird things that are in all these Living End lists I don't really like. So everybody just has a bunch of Damping Matrix in their sideboard, and I think that's because the Bant decks had Clarion Conqueror, and Damping Matrix is like a Clarion Conqueror, but it's not a 3/3 flying, which is, a huge deal, obviously. I don't really think there are many decks in Modern that get completely owned by Damping Matrix, and Clarion Conqueror is really only acceptable because it was also a thing that pressures them while, kind of making their life harder, but not impossible. And then Inevitable Betrayal, I thought was pretty important for the Goryo's matchup. This is a bribery that works with the, Cascade mechanic, and everyone always only plays, like, they only ever play 2, and their sideboard always has kind of mediocre cards, and I don't know, just play 3. They're not as bad to draw. You can suspend them. I don't think...
So how does this work? You board it in, and then you
board out all your Living Ends.
You board out the Living Ends, okay.
It's because Goryo specifically is just, like, gonna put Atraxa and Gristlebrand in their graveyard, and it's really hard, even through a pretty decently large Living End, to, like, overcome that being in their graveyard.
I see.
And even... I would say if you're playing Goryos, by the way, do not side out all your Atraxas and Gristlebrands against the Living End player. They'll be so happy that you did that, because they're still just going to like play a Shardless Agent that puts a Riddler into play. So you're never going to like get them. You should have like your really annoying combo available to yourself, I think, for them.
Okay.
But yeah, and then also like, other people have endurance. Like, I guess I would say Neoform's another example where like they just might have all this weird interaction, and they might be doing a good job of making the Living End annoying, and you just like know that if you take their Gristlebrand, you'll win. So like, why bother, opening yourself up to weird endurances or stuff like that? Though these decks I'm mentioning all have Mystical Dispute, so maybe I'm kind of wrong here, and maybe this is also a holdover from being locked into sorcery speed, and you just need to like beat these things, because Violent Outburst being an instant also just makes life easier at beating those types of things.
Okay.
Like the Violent Outburst thing also, like, when you're doing a graveyard switch, makes you much more favored in the graveyard switch. And I'll point to the Mirror as an example. When I played Temur Living Ends for a long stretch of time, I would board out all my Shardless Agents in the Mirror, because I was just not a believer that you could like sorcery speed a Living End and on average end up ahead. You're both just gonna have a huge board, and the person who attacks first, especially because there's a lot of flyers involved, might be the one that wins.
Right. Oh man, the Mirror for this deck seems
it's very weird.
Funny. Yeah.
It's a weird battle of zones. At the time, I had Bone Crusher Giant. If you ever register Bone Crusher Giant in your living end deck, you should board it in the mirror because a 3-mana 4/3 is actually good in the mirror.
Because you just play it and nobody wants to living in, and then you.
Yeah, you just want to pressure both the graveyard and the battlefield. That's what matters a lot.
Gotcha.
Obviously, Endurance is like the best card ever, but you're locked at 4. So
Yeah. Okay. So, real chance of being one of the top decks, right? In your mind, sounds like it. That's what you think.
yeah, we'll see how it performs against various things. Interesting. This challenge still has 3 Boros Energy players. I'll say.
Huh.
But yeah, I think Living
Dedicated.
End's a lot better at beating Hate. I think we knew that from when it got banned. It's surprisingly good against Hate because it's all cyclers and surveil lands. Like that's a big part of why. I think I've had many people complain to me about how perfect I drew as Living End, and it's just like, look at my deck list. What else can my deck do besides draw perfect? It's silly to say it that way, but honestly, that's how it felt playing it.
Pretty consistent deck with all the cyclers and stuff.
Yeah, it's only free spells and cyclers and Living Ends. Like what else is going to happen besides that?
And you have like more than 4 copies of Living End essentially.
Yeah.
I see here that also in the top 8 of this challenge is a Yawgmoth deck. This seems like a deck that definitely benefits from Flage going away.
Definitely. I mean, this is some cool stuff to see. This deck has, gotten some tools for a while now, I think. Badgermole Cub, obviously it's a mana dork deck to begin with, so that's cool. Second of all, Cub puts a creature with a +1/+1 counter in play, so that's kind of cool for Soul Cauldron. It's also like 2 bodies for Yawgmoth. Perfect fit in this deck. Virulent Emissary, I didn't think about this one, but, Yawgmoth has randomly, it's played like the halfling previously, not Delighted Halfling, but the Soul Warden Halfling. I'm forgetting the name of it.
Some Soul Warden, a 2-mana one,
makes
or
a treasure. Yeah.
2
mana makes a treasure. The Virulent Emissary, is a 1-drop that doesn't make a treasure, which is maybe just better. It also has Death Touch, and I learned this from a friend's experience in RCQ where they had Virulent Emissary into Soul Cauldron and then corded for Ballista, and it meant like every turn they could tap and exile a creature to the Ballista and just put a counter on their Death Touching Ballista basically and kill another creature, which just keeps fueling the Cauldron, which meant if your opponent didn't have interaction, then like you were just going to kill every creature they played.
Yeah, that's pretty nice.
It's obviously kind of like an easy thing to get out of. It just takes like 1 removal spell, but it's still, the Death Touch is not irrelevant is all I really mean by that.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to be playing it anyways. Right?
Yeah, and the Soul Warden thing is so that like when you assemble 2 Young Wolves with Yawgmoth, you basically can pay a life to draw a card as much time as you want. So having a cheap, especially for Quarter Calling's sake or Dina's sake, of cheap like Soul Warden thing means you can turn that into just draw your whole deck.
Mm-hmm. This list has 1 Endurance and no more in the sideboard. I guess that's just because it's got tutor things.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, it's using like Chalice the Void in the sideboard instead. We're going to see a lot more of that again. Chalice for 0. One of the better things, you can do against Living Ends. I know there's Vexing Wobble now too, so those cards are going to be competing with each other. But a 0-mana Hate permanent is, about as good as it gets. So,
oh yeah,
at least even if they're kind of, main decking for Wistfulness and going to have more sideboard answers, at least you're going to be up a decent amount of mana when they answer it, and hopefully can capitalize in other ways.
Yeah, makes sense. I wonder. It's kind of funny. I feel like if you used Umezawa's GT against this deck, this would be like the perfect matchup for the GT, and it might still not do anything because they have so many tricks to not let you deal damage with your creature.
I'll point out another thing about Chalice really quick. I'm not a fan of actually playing a lot of copies of them because you can't play a second one on 0. They'll counter each other. So
you have to like hold it and wait, and by then
I'm a big fan of like, if your modern deck doesn't have any cards of CMC 0 in it, just put a Chalice of Void in your sideboard. It's probably going to be pretty good right now, but don't put a second.
No, not even a second.
We'll do something else like Vexing Bottle. I don't know.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. So you could stack them up, make sure they don't combo from underneath you. All right. Well, Modern looks interesting. We're definitely, I imagine, going to be talking about Modern a bit more in the future with the Pro Tour coming up and all that. So hopefully this actually changes stuff up. I mean, sometimes they've made ban list changes in Modern, and then people try all the new things, and then they just go back to all the same stuff they were doing before. So we'll see.
Yeah, it's funny. It makes sense to me that Boros is immediately still doing totally fine. I don't expect that to stay the same. If like, I just don't think it's that strong or resilient of a deck anymore. I guess mostly just strong is what I mean. But people have the cards, they have the deck. They're just going to be scrambling for replacements right away. I get it.
Yeah, and they're going to be still trying it until they're beaten into the ground.
Every single list in this top 8 has 1 or 2 mana tithes. I don't know where that's just out of nowhere. We've just decided mana tithe is what we need, huh?
Yeah, I don't know about that one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already in open decklist mode for the PT, so it's a little bizarre to me.
To have it mana tithe, yeah. Never really liked that card. Okay, why don't we touch on Pioneer briefly?
Yeah, they banned Corey Steelcutter. I think this was absolutely necessary from the last time I touched Pioneer. They also announced there's going to be more Pioneer tournaments, hopefully in 2027. That'll be nice. Anyways, I kept giving the description about Pioneer after I tried it in January for the qualifier weekends that it was kind of rock, paper, scissorsy, where I think there was fast prowess decks as kind of the clear deck to beat. And the counter to those strategies was very over the top. Like, they would have a mix of high noons and lockdowns and pinnacle star charts pinnacle dark ages among various white decks, white, blue, white, black, saw it all. Very anti-prowess, purely just like basically just trying to beat prowess and nothing else as far as I could tell. And the third deck in this rock, paper, scissors was just a different category of cutter decks like Phoenix, or people actually started playing Lessons to success with Divide by Zero and Grand and same kind of standard lessons you've seen, but Steel Cutter as well. And those slower prowess decks just function really well into High Noon and Lockdown because they're not like as vulnerable to Lockdown. They really just only have Cutter, and they have a lot of instants, which means they're still just casting 2 spells a turn over both turns, and they have bounce spells in their main deck, like Into the Flood, Mob Brazen Borrower, or Divide by Zero, or Boomerang Basics, stuff like that. So I really thought you basically should have only played one of those 3 strategies, so I'm excited to see Pioneer kind of open up now.
Yeah, it was pretty boring, honestly. It was very clear that Corey Steelcutter was too powerful for the format, which is funny because it's kind of like an Eternal format, but they did cut off before they cut it off at whatever they, Ravnica or whatever. So there's still a lot of broken cards that aren't in that format. So it's kind of like the best of standard years past. And there's been a lot of power creep, and Corey Steelcutter is really strong. So good to see that going. I wouldn't be surprised if Izzet Prowess is still good in this format. But
yeah, actually taking a quick peek, I suppose between when I last looked at it and now, a new deck has emerged, which is Golgari midrange. This deck has a bunch of Culling Rituals in the main deck and Abrupt Decays. So this still seems very much anti-prowess in my mind, but maybe it's proactive enough to be good against all cutter decks instead of just the one. And to be clear, the advantage of playing the really aggressive cutter decks is I just think in the cutter mirrors, the faster deck is favored.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
this deck's kind of cool because it's it's got a lot of good cards. It's kind of like if green black midrange and standard was good because it has like Fatal Push and Thoughtseize.
I agree. This deck, the only thing in this deck that I'm kind of doesn't look pretty to me is a bunch of main deck Culling Rituals, but it makes sense. I think they had to play them probably.
It's just with this format, but I can imagine this deck.
But that's just main decking a sideboard card or whatever. Like they have Invoke Despair in their sideboard, which if it just had the Invoke Despair's main and the Culling Ritual sideboard, this would look like a pretty normal deck to me.
Yeah, like this might be still a good. I do kind of think Witherbloom Charm sucks. I've seen people play with it, and I'm just never impressed.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Those are small details, but the black mid range stuff with the new Planeswalker and Annex, that's cool.
Yeah, Delian Fell, I think could fit potentially nicely. It's really nice to set this up with like some Thoughtseize and Abrupt Decay. So this could definitely still be a good deck. I mean, Pioneer is actually kind of got some cool things going on. I'm interested to see what next year brings if they actually put it in the spotlight a bit, because it doesn't have to be like a Pro Tour format, but even if it's just like an RC format or they've got some spotlights or something, I still think that could be pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a Scapeshift deck in that format too that I'd be excited to play in paper because I don't have to play like
the Lotus Field deck,
and able to win. Yeah. It's a lot more tame than Amulet.
Lumra. Yeah.
You just like keep using the land's Port of Karfeld, which is like a call time land that lets you pay 6 and sack it, mill 4 cards, return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. You just bring back Lumra and all your Lotus Fields like over and over again, and you mill yourself, and then you win with something. You could win with Ipnu Rivlilet, like the land that mills 4 cards. Because people only play Pioneer digitally, they play stupid cards like Thassa's Oracle or I guess Terror of the Peaks that I think are completely unacceptable to play in paper, but it makes sense to play.
Makes your life
online,
a lot easier to play online.
Thank you for listening to the Stock Up Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, you can support us over on patreon.com/stockuppodcast. That is the best way to support us. At the moment, it's $1 a month, and you get access to all of our exclusive content that we post over there, as well as access to our Stock Up Podcast Discord, which is growing, and I think we have a lot of fun conversations over there. So go check that out. Of course, you could also follow us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe while you're there. And Apple Podcasts, Spotify, all that jazz. You can listen to us there, anywhere. And we want to thank our patrons that have been with us from the start, a lot of you, and whoever has joined recently. We really do appreciate it. It means a lot. So please enjoy the rest of the episode. Stick around to the end, okay? And we'll talk to you later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that ought to do it for this one, folks. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you next time. So there's there's kind of a lot of interesting arena things going on. First of all, I just realized here that there was an alchemy ban,
Right.
which is pretty funny.
It's a really funny one.
It's
They banned first
Sewer
of all,
Valence Cam is
Sewer Valence
banned.
Cam, just a hilarious card name to get banned.
Yeah.
A card we've talked about before, because yes, it does have some combo applications, but this one's really unique. Because for those that don't know, Vivi is nerfed in Alchemy on Arena, not banned. And the nerf is that it's basically the same card, except instead of 0 to activate, you have to tap it. So, you'd have to untap with it or give it haste, and ideally, not go into combat with it. And just, the Sewer Valence Cam has this tap-untap ability, so they're just abusing it with that. As far as I can understand, they're just boomerang basicsing the Sewer Valence Cam.
I'm sure they are.
Just casting and sacking it, I'm sure, with the mana 2 to untap BV again. I guess that would be a loop pretty easily with Storm Chaser's talent maybe and something, but maybe not even a loop. I doubt they have to do some full combo loop to just beat people with BV that way.
Yeah, they would die really quickly at all the pings and the giant creature attacking them. It is hilarious. I mean, I don't play that format, so I have in the past, but I just can't. I don't like the nerfs. I'd rather they just ban things, to be honest. I actually think the nerfs are more of a deterrent from that format than just them printing broken cards, which, like, I was looking through some of the new cards from the Alchemy for Secrets of Strixhaven, and there's some really broken cards in there that they would never print in paper, but...
Yeah, I think Alchemy is my least favorite format now.
It really didn't age well. I thought it'd be cool when it came out.
Smaller than Standard.
Yeah.
Weirdly, it doesn't have
this
the extra
is something
gear
I kind of liked.
like Standard has. And it just makes me think that the Alchemy cards are so high impact every time I've looked at that format. They matter more than most things.
Oh, yeah.
And the Alchemy nerfs mess up my other formats. So that's
I know.
Like,
they mess
I
up
come to like
historic.
Historic. And I hate learning that Omnath costs 5 mana still. Like, what's up with that? That's not even legal in Alchemy. Why does it still cost 5 mana? But it's because it was an Alchemy nerf a while ago. But then they learned to revert some of them, but they clearly haven't gone back and fixed others. Because I played the Chorus package. The Chorus package was the broken thing to do in Alchemy last time there was an Alchemy Arena qualifier, I think. They nerfed it. But now that's rotated out of Standard and is unnerfed. So I got to play with it in Historic, and that's cool. The biggest thing to me, though, just in Arena generally, if there's any feedback that could stick, is if you're going to nerf paper cards for Alchemy, just let me play the unnerfed ones in Historic and then ban them in Historic. There's a Historic Arena Championship this weekend from all those qualifiers. That's this weekend.
Right.
So
Wow,
they're
okay.
obviously trying to hype up the format, and people like the format.
Yeah, it's a good format.
Strixhaven just added some new cards, so it's already different. You know, we did a lot of historic episodes last time. I had some people qualified in that tournament ask me about my mono green deck. I'm kind of excited about that, but I don't think doesn't imply they're going to take it. My understanding is what happened is they printed Pyretic Ritual and Jessica's Will, a card that literally has the phrase "if you control your commander" on it, and Ruby Storm is now very popular. If you don't know what Jessica's Will does, it's very good even if you don't have a commander. It's 2 and a red. If you have your commander, choose both. Otherwise, choose one. Either exile the top 3 cards of your library, you can play them this turn, or add red equal to the amount of cards your opponent has in hand.
It's like the perfect storm card.
Yeah, it's a split ritual / Ren's Resolve, basically, but bigger on both. Split Seething Song / Glimpse the Impossible, maybe better to say. And so now people just play like Ral and Ruby stuff, which somehow is maybe forced the format back into a black mid-range war, even though the Phoenix deck with Demilich like immediately dominated previously. That deck maybe was too bad against Ruby Storm. So now, I don't know, people maybe are asking me about the mono green deck because it's good against the Thoughtseize Fatal Push decks. It's obviously not going to be good against a deck like Ruby Storm, though.
No, it's not.
Or Belcher. I think Belcher is the other deck that people play now, which is...
Is it because we're Magic players? I've played other digital card games where they nerf and buff things, and I don't get bothered, but I just don't like nerfs. Like, just ban it. Like, why are you nerfing?
Yeah,
well, they buff things sometimes
it's the paper
too.
Cards that bother me. I just want all the paper cards to do what they do in paper.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it. And if you
so like if they nerfed one of the
Jarsel, whatever,
Jarsel, you wouldn't care.
I don't care.
Okay.
Nerf Jarsel, I don't care.
Yeah, that sounds right. That's probably how I feel too.
Yeah.
It's just like you can't differentiate.
I don't want to know 2 different cards.
Yeah, and have to remember
they're the same card. Yeah.
Just feels wrong, you know?
Yeah.
Just feels wrong. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to see more alchemy cards in the Arena Cube. I know people groan at them, but I don't know. Intensity, like there's some that are ridiculous, whatever. But then they added Oracle the Alpha anyways because they made the paper cards. But like there's like cards that care about if you're the starting player. You could put those cards in your paper cube. You could just print them out, and if somebody drafted a card that says it's Strangle, but it's an instant if you weren't the starting player, like you could figure that out in a paper cube. Like it wouldn't be that big of a deal. So I wouldn't mind to see that category of cards. You could figure out Jarsel even in a paper cube.
Some of the alchemy cards are really fun because they can do some cool things with them. They just don't balance them that well. They just go crazy. With some of them. But I mean, for Vintage Cube, that's kind of fine.
Yeah, that's
the other arena thing that's interesting that's happening is thank God they're getting rid of Through the Omen Pass.
Yeah, that's nice.
So they were able to negotiate something with somebody after how badly the Spider-Man set did online, I think.
It made me think of a really interesting question, but I'll go through my stream of thought first. First of all, Through the Omen Pass did something kind of nice, which is you could learn all these names for cards that weren't just Spider-Man because they had different names, like Cavero.
Well, that just shows the weakness of the Spider-Man set, though, right?
Yeah, but that leads me to my next question. How many cards named Spider-Man do you think there'll be in the Marvel set? Do you... I'm hoping...
I don't know, like 5?
Okay, so yeah, see, it still sounds so bad to me that
I know.
there's going to be that many Spider-Mans.
He's just the most popular superhero of all time.
Yeah, but I'm just hoping that, like, maybe they stick with just Peter Parker. Maybe they don't have to go through a bunch of cycles. There's obviously going to be at least one Spider-Man, but, like, I just have a feeling there's going to be...
Maybe there's enough superheroes that's wrong. Certainly over the course of however many sets they're doing, there's going to be a lot.
Yeah, I mean, literally just the next one. But it still seems ridiculous to me that I feel like there's going to be, like, at least 2 or 3 Spider-Mans in just the next set.
To learn even more Spider-Mans.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. We're going to be able to have skins of the Through the Omen Pass still if you want. So you can still play with Cavero if you hate Superior Spider-Man.
Okay. Nice.
Or if you think Cavero is just a cool guy or whatever.
Yeah, or the weird one is that, like...
Multiversal Passage has nice art.
Belly and the Parched was
Pass.
horrible. It made no sense he was the Parched.
Oh, yeah. Why is he parched? He's drinking water all the time.
Yeah, and also Fluid Felon was just such a nice name. There's some that's... I told somebody to play Rhino's Rampage in their Pioneer deck,
Uh-huh.
and they tried to tell me they don't know what that card is
I don't know
because
what that card
they
is.
thought I was using a digital only name, and I was like, it's the same name actually. It's Rhino the villain Spider-Man, and then it's just a rhino as an animal online. So
How did they ever think that was going to be a good idea? Holy. Maybe they didn't, but they were forced into it. And now that they have some leverage being like, see how terrible this is, they've finally got the approval.
well, I'm sure they threw a bunch of money at it too, but
Yeah, but like maybe
they
they
needed
were.
approval for the buddy. Yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah. Or Marvel was finally like, okay, you're right. That is terrible.
That's a pretty classic Wizards thing that it wouldn't surprise me if
Yeah.
it happens internally too, where they just
Yeah.
like they get really
It's a
cheap
corporation
with
thing.
something and they wait to see what the backlash is. And it used to be, I remember there was just like a year straight where it was just like, just remember anytime Wizards releases something that you should ask them for more because they're holding back.
Yeah.
They-
Right now, we're fighting with them to give us good promos. Like every other card game gives us such good promos. We kind of have crap promos.
Yeah, that one is one of the less like acceptable things to me in Pro
It
Magic
is.
right now because it's such a free roll on their end.
And they've never increased, like they so rarely have increased the prize pool in general. And this is a huge way they could increase the prize pool without
Absolutely
much
agree.
effort. Yeah.
I mean, there's a Pro Tour Discord, and like maybe I haven't mentioned it directly in there, only to other people. Maybe I should mention it because it's so weird. Like people just the Final Fantasy one was the weirdest one where they said your promo is going to be Karn Liberated for the PT Final Fantasy, and everybody was just kind of sad. And then like a week or two before the tournament, they announced that Cloud promo.
Oh, interesting.
Just
Didn't
put
know that.
multiple $1,000s in every competitive.
It's huge.
Thing,
And it doesn't even
basically,
cost
the
them.
prize pool.
I don't see any realistic equity that costs them.
Yeah, the most expensive part of that process has to be the art of the card.
Yeah.
Which they
Well, I would think the most expensive process would be like they could have put that in a secret layer. So it's like missed out money in that sense.
okay, that makes sense. You're probably right on that. It's probably like because I also thought it was already art that exists. So yeah, it's like minus a card for a secret layer, but
they always like they have infinite things they could do for secret layers anyways. It's not like they're
the specific thing I would love for them to do that I still don't think would cost very much money is serialize them.
Oh yeah.
And just literally put them 1 through 350, and whatever place you finish at the Pro Tour, give them
That's
that
the
number.
one you get. Yeah.
And that's kind of cool too because it makes the better numbers better.
Right.
And like One Piece, the card game, does that. They don't do it with the placements, but the top 8 promos are serialized. They're like, we made 700 of these, and they're for top 8s of these types of tournaments, and you'll get one of the numbers at random.
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
even if they just wanted to serialize the top 8 because that's a lot easier or whatever, that would still be cool.
And
It's funny
like-
because they could have always done this. And it's like these new card games that popped up and they're just showing you why there's no reason why you can't do this. It's just a huge boon for these other card games. Like I know some people who are like trying these other card games just so they could get some of these promos because they're worth a good chunk of money and they're cool and it's fun to play for them.
I don't really want them to like do this because I think the players could just get this for free and it's not a big deal to Wizards, but like they could add serialized foil promos and like cut like $100,000 from the Pro Tour and everybody would win.
Yeah,
I feel like
they could. That's tough.
yeah. like
they could literally take the money from the thing and be like,
definitely-
"Oh, we're going to spend this money on making the promos," and everyone would win out.
yeah, but your secret layer argument's a good one because that does maybe cost them but it's kind of fake, right? Because they still get another card in that secret layer instead.
That's kind of what I mean.
It's also like they just if they
Or it's
wanted
like
to put
reprint
Cloud-
equity for a master set or something. I don't know.
Yeah, but if they want to put Cloud in a secret layer, to me that's still just an art cost in the end, right? They just need a different art of Cloud yet again. It's nothing stopping them from putting Cloud in a secret layer just because it was the PT promo.
Right. And because it's a promo, it's not like they're devaluing like the secondary market of things, or they're not like they can't lay one thing that if like let's say they reprint a card in a master set, then that card gets devalued and they can't reprint it again for a long time. But if it's like a promo,
Yeah, it doesn't affect the price. Of
it
the
doesn't
normal card
affect
at
them
all.
because it's not
There's
enough
only-
of them.
Yeah, there's 3
And it's a different
of them.
art and it's just really cool for collectors and yeah.
Yep.
Big L. Hope they do something about it. They might be aware of it if people bitch enough. who
Yeah,
knows?
well, it's weird because it felt like they really responded with the cloud promo, but then I learned there was no avatar promo at Worlds.
Yeah, why
and it's
not?
just like
That was
so
weird.
it's like a step backwards, and
They did Lord
just
of the Rings. They did Final Fantasy. Avatar would have been a
Yep.
huge hit.
Yep, everyone is clamoring for a Marvel one.
Hmm.
And serializing them I think would just be super simple.
Yeah.
They already I've only gotten top 32 at the Pro Tour once since the change where they give the foil ones out, but like you still have to wait for the final standings. You get in line and they handed me a foil Ren and 6, and it's just like they could just have all the serialized cards in numerical order
Yeah.
and be like, okay, it's the final standings. Just come up and like, yeah, sure, whatever. You have to wait for round 16 to go to time and go 20 minutes overtime, and then for them to do the top 8 announcement, and you have to wait 2 hours in dinner. Here's your $3,000 card. Like,
Yeah.
okay, it's fine. Like,
Yeah, just
No
for
one's gonna
the
complain.
for the amount of benefit it would be to the players. I mean, it's like it would be game changing, I think.
Yeah.
So, all right. Let's stop.